Jerry Seinfeld and Tiffany Haddish. Both Zionists, both pretty cringe. We're going to start with Jerry Seinfeld, and then we're going to work our way up to Tiffany Haddish. So first and foremost, I totally forgot about Jerry Seinfeld until after October 7th. Yes, I know, like many of you, I watched Seinfeld like when I was growing up. But honestly, I totally forgot this guy was still alive. I'm just keeping it real. Totally forgot until after October 7th. And I saw videos of him on social media walking out of Barry Weiss's apartment, criticizing pro-Palestinian protesters. And then I remembered this guy is still around. Totally forgot about this guy. Well, apparently Jerry Seinfeld actually spoke at Duke's commencement. And there were some students that were part of the ceremony that decided to walk out on Jerry. And I don't blame them. Let's get into this article here from Politico, and then we'll take a look at that video. About 30 students walk out on Jerry Seinfeld at Duke commencement. So there he is. It's always interesting to me how they just pick random celebrities or has-been celebrities to come speak at these commencement events. It's just really interesting. Notice how they frame this, a tiny contingent, right? A tiny contingent of Duke University graduates opposed pro-Israel comedian Jerry Seinfeld speaking at their commencement in North Carolina on Sunday, with about 30 of the 7,000 students leaving their seats and chanting Free Palestine amid a mix of boos and cheers. Some waved the red, green, black, and white Palestinian flag. Seinfeld, whose decade-long namesake show became one of the most popular in U.S. television history and who continues to draw legions of fans to his Netflix specials and TV appearances such as Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, was there to receive an honorary doctorate from the university. So this is another thing I want to just highlight here. The honorary doctorate. I really want universities to stop doing this. Okay. Can we just stop handing out degrees to people just because they came to speak at the university? Stop. Going on here. After spending 4 years at what is considered one of the finest institutions of higher education in the world, they apparently feel that perhaps some light entertainment will get you all to the final realization. You know, I think I've really had enough of this place, Seinfeld says. The stand-up turned actor and recent star director and co-writer of the recent movie Unfrosted has publicly supported Israel since it invaded Gaza to dismantle Hamas. I want to show you these pictures here as well. These were protests that happened at the University of Michigan commencement. So it's been happening across the board at different colleges, right? So it goes on to say students at campuses across the U.S. responded this spring by setting up encampments and calling for their schools to cut ties with Israel and businesses that support it. So let's go ahead and take a look at that video footage so you can see for yourself. Gaza Under Attack actually tweeted this, and they said, amazing job at Duke University. Student walkout at Duke University commencement as Jerry Seinfeld's speech is announced. His introduction by university president is being drowned out by Free, Free Palestine chants. Let's take a look at this, folks.
Jerry is also serving as our commencement speaker today.
I just want to pause it so you can see what's happening. You see some of the students walking out here with the Palestinian flag.
So what's the big deal about commencement speaker?
Yeah, so a mixture of boos and cheers there. Really interesting. You know, what else is really interesting about Jerry Seinfeld? We'll get to that in just a second. At this event, they did pass out flyers. So student activists said not a single university left in Gaza, no graduation as usual. So this is something I want to mention as well that people need to understand. The colleges in Gaza have been destroyed. The hospitals in Gaza have been destroyed. So when Americans, who sometimes we can be very selfish, tend to say, I don't want to see a protest. I just want to go to my daughter and son's commencement, and I just want to sit there undisturbed. You need to understand that you actually should be thankful that you have a commencement to go to, that you have a university to still go to, that it still exists. Gaza is gone. The institutions that were there are gone. They have been flattened to the ground, not just the universities, but also the hospitals and the culture of the Palestinian people. It's destroyed. So while you complain because you went to commencement and you're upset because a couple of students decided to stand up and walk out and that bothered you, or because they interrupted the introduction of Jerry Seinfeld and that bothered you, think about how bothered those mothers and those fathers and those kids in Gaza right now must feel, knowing that their entire world, their entire culture, their entire life around them is gone. These are some of the things that we take for granted as Americans. The fact that you have a college to walk into to go to a commencement right now. Jerry Seinfeld is a whole clown. He really is. One of the other things that they mentioned here, join students in protesting Duke's complicity in genocide. When you see students walking out, follow them. And they have a whole message here as well. Now, something else about Jerry Seinfeld, and this is something some people may not be aware of. Jory says, I can never appreciate his show again. Shout out to Mint Press News for this one. In 2018, Seinfeld attended a shoot to kill fantasy camp in Israel, where attendees can carry out fantasies of taking their frustrations out on Palestinians. How sick can you be as a person? If this were the other way around, and this fantasy camp actually involved people pretending to kill Israelis, there would be tremendous outroar from mainstream media. Tremendous outroar. You have to be some type of sick psycho to take pleasure in something like that. And you have to ask yourself, what is being taught to people like Jerry, to Israeli children? What are they teaching them as children to the point where you would find joy in doing something like that? And there's more. Oh, we're not done with you yet. Remember those counter protesters that were at UCLA, the ones that threw firecrackers at students that were in the encampments, which is very dangerous, by the way. The ones who started attacking those kids that were just in tents minding their own business. You see, Jerry Seinfeld's wife, who he started dating when she was underage, by the way. That's another story, but let's get, what the hell does a grown ass man want in a 17-year-old girl? His wife and Bill Ackman, they actually funded a pro-Israel counter protest. So let's make the connection here back to UCLA. It'll go on here to say, Jessica Seinfeld, cookbook author and wife to comedian Jerry Seinfeld, is funding a pro-Israel counter protest at UCLA, where violence broke out Tuesday night after a mob attacked demonstrators inside the pro-Palestine encampment. Again, she would not have been doing this, I'm sure, without his approval. I'm pretty sure he had no problem with this, considering that he participated in that fantasy camp where he got to pretend to kill Palestinian people. Everybody needs to boycott Jerry Seinfeld now. Don't watch his show. Don't watch the old Seinfeld reruns. Unfollow him if you follow him on social media, or actually block him on social media. Don't watch his Netflix specials. Don't buy his wife's cookbook. Do you see what is happening here? That is absolutely disgusting. Him and his wife. And of course, Bill Ackman would be in the mix. Once again, look at who is the aggressor. It goes on to say here, a GoFundMe for the effort, which Seinfeld promoted in an Instagram story this week after contributing at least $5,000, has since made the majority of its donations anonymous. The fundraising page has raised more than $93,000 as of Wednesday, and also changed its organizer name and description since launching over the weekend. The Daily Beast left messages for reps for the Seinfelds. Of course, have not heard from them. Danny says, let's be honest, Larry David was the talent who made Jerry Seinfeld. Yeah. Larry David is also the actor that portrayed Bernie Sanders. For those who are not aware, that was Larry David. He was the one that did that. Interesting. Did you guys ever think Jerry Seinfeld was actually really that funny? I'm looking back on it. I'm like, were they real? Was he really that funny? Or were the co-stars on Seinfeld funny? Right? Makes you wonder. Goes on to say here, I just gave to this GoFundMe to support more allies like yesterday's at UCLA, Seinfeld wrote this week. So she gave herself away. More cities are being planned, so please give what you can. Donations are anonymous. We will continue to share our light and love as proud American Jews. Sharing light and love, does that include throwing firecrackers at peaceful protesters? That's light and love? I don't understand why this is not like an entire investigation at this point. Makes you wonder. But it's not just Jerry Seinfeld, because now we move over to Tiffany Haddish. I told you the celebrities are a mess. Tiffany Haddish. She took her trip to Israel. She announced that she was going over there to see for herself with her own eyes as she was kind of tipsy on the plane. She's another Zionist. Made a whole fool of herself. Prior to this event, what I'm about to show you now, where she actually is criticizing, I guess, college students in the audience about their protest. Tiffany Haddish has a big problem. As for someone who's a comedian, she has a big problem learning how to read the room. So check this out. Felipe, thank you for sharing this. Totally brainless Zionist money slave. That's how Felipe referred to Tiffany. Tiffany Haddish never went to college, so that's why she says she asked to F many times the students in solidarity with the Palestinians. Now again, Tiffany Haddish. Here's someone who is a Black woman. You would think she would have some type, of connection with people being oppressed, people being occupied. No, she don't want to hear about that. Tiffany Haddish is about getting that check. Listen what she says to them.
Colleges, right? I don't give a fuck about that shit. I've never went to college. Why would I care? Why would I care about college? Boo to college? Or boo that I never went? Or boo that I don't give a fuck about the college? Boo that I don't give a fuck about the college? Why should I give a fuck about the college? There's not genocide at the college. I give a fuck about what's going on the other side of the world, but why would I give a fuck about the college?
Do you see how awful this is so far? So she kind of gives something away here when she says, I understand about genocide happening on the other side of the world. So in a way, she kind of admits that there is genocide happening. She kind of gives that away. Someone was asking who she is. Tiffany Haddish is a comedian. She's also an actress. She's one of those people that blew up very quickly, which I was very suspicious about because typically people in comedy do not blow up quickly. Herself and Kevin Hart, I've always given a side eye to because I'm like, really, you just blew up out of nowhere and all of a sudden you're getting all these starring roles in movies. Talk to people who have done comedy and ask them how long it took them to actually make it in the comedy game. And she just blows up out of nowhere. Same thing with Amy Schumer. I said the same thing, who is also not funny. She goes on here.
Because of Africa? Because Africa is working at the college? Shut the fuck up. This is the shit I'm talking about. Stupid motherfuckers at the college. Ain't never worked a goddamn day in your life. Do you remember 9/11, bitch? No, forget about it.
What does 9/11 have to do with Gaza? Is she just mixing up people in the Middle East or something? Does she think they're all from the same country? Does she remember it? Last time I checked, Palestinians weren't flying those planes. What's she talking about? So you see the way she berated people in the audience, her own audience? People paid for those tickets. Are they going to get their money back? Tiffany, will you give them their money back?
We were under attack. 11 terrorists blew our shit up. 3,000 people dead. What the fuck did we do, America? Do y'all remember what we did? If you're from the 1900s, you remember. We went the fuck over there. We fucked they ass up, didn't we?
Yeah, this is a really, really bad take, because what she doesn't understand is that it's not 2003 anymore. And people actually do not consider that to be a positive thing, the way that our military responded, especially considering the fact that we were lied to about the war in Iraq. Does she even pay attention to foreign policy? Does she even pay attention to politics? Does she know about the history? Doesn't she remember that this was all a lie? What is she talking about? Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, they said. This was a lie.
I went over there. I flew on a plane. I went over there and did comedy for the troops. I did do that. I did comedy for our American troops.
This is why I do not think it is a good idea to idolize people at all. This is why it's not a good idea to idolize people and not to fall in love with personalities. Everyone loved Tiffany Haddish after the movie Girl Trip, right? Everybody loved her. Oh, Tiffany. Everyone loved her, right? But Tiffany has said some very offensive things in reference to this particular genocide. And not to mention the trouble that she got into with Ari Spears as well, with the movie, the documentary that they had produced as well. Very problematic. However, there is good news. And Tiffany and Jerry Seinfeld probably would not be happy to hear this, but you will. It appears that one school so far, this is the only one I found so far, has agreed to divest from Israel. It is Columbia University affiliated Seminary to divest from Israel. The Union Theological Seminary announces its board of trustees endorse a divestment plan from companies profiting from war in Palestine / Israel. Excuse me. It goes on to say here, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but this piece here. A Christian seminary in New York affiliated with Columbia University recently announced plans to divest from Israel and other companies involved in the ongoing war with Israel and Hamas. On May 9th, the Union Theological Seminary in New York announced that its board of trustees had endorsed a divestment plan from companies profiting from war in Palestine / Israel over the decades. We have developed what are called socially responsible investment screens to express our values and not financially support damaging and immoral investments. With respect to companies that are profiting from the present war in Palestine, notice they call it Palestine, we continue to hold these standards high and have taken steps to identify all investments, both domestic and global, that support and profit from the present killing of innocent civilians in Palestine, whose numbers are now over 34,000 and a humanitarian crisis of ever-growing magnitude. The seminary said it remained unequivocal in its denouncement of the civilian deaths caused by Hamas terrorists on October 7th. So they still have issue with October 7th. It added, our investment policies will continue to adapt, guided by our guidelines, to strengthen the resolve that undergirds our decision today. In fact, you can see all of those steps that they laid out on their website. Small, but it's still a win. Because it makes me wonder, will other universities, will other schools, no matter how big or small, will they also follow suit, right? Meanwhile, the State Department is also in shambles. They're having a difficult time trying to defend Israel. We got to give a shout out here to Asal Rod. Watch state spokesman respond to SM Erekat, raising issue of genocidal language from Israeli officials. Let's get into this. You notice, guys, they're starting to sweat more. They're starting to have more difficulty responding to these questions.
President of Israel, Herzog, said there are no civilians in Gaza. That's what he said. When Gallant says, they're human animals and we're going to wipe out Gaza, those were his words. When the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, says the Amalek spare no one, kill the children, do all that, that is not enough evidence that they were planning.
This is
that
not.
They were planning. As
upsetting as it might be for you, this is not a report on rhetoric.
Okay.
Okay. This is a report
rhetoric?
On the facts on the ground,
Sure.
and the fact.
So let me pause it here for a second. This is not a report on rhetoric. Okay. This is a report about the facts on the ground. But rhetoric is an issue in reference to legislation, right? I mean, we have a Congress that passed legislation that basically it's very vague in reference to what the new definition of anti-Semitism is. So apparently rhetoric is important. It just doesn't seem to be important in reference to the Palestinian people. And that's what he's telling you without actually saying that. They don't like it when you call out Israel's rhetoric, their atrocities, etc.
Facts on the ground there are civilians in Gaza.
Right,
so
right.
I would dispute with
Right.
anybody making that claim.
Yeah.
But two, what we're talking about is what the facts are. And the facts are that we are dealing with a belligerent that uses civilians as human shields, has a long track record of co-locating itself with civilians
Sure.
and civilian infrastructure. And thus it has not been possible to make a conclusive assessment. However, we do not determine that Israel has violated international law. But what we are saying, Saeed, is that one, Israel has had to confront an extraordinary military challenge, but that simultaneously, it is reasonable to assess that Israeli security forces since October 7th, there have been instances that are inconsistent with its international humanitarian law obligations. And the United States will continue to look at instances on the ground through the tools that are at our disposal. But also, our partners in Israel have indicated to us that they will continue to take steps to look into this through their own system as well.
Right, because internal investigations also work out so well. How's that work out for the police departments, right? Right. So they're becoming more nervous. And you'll also see that here as well with Jake Sullivan. He's also starting to stumble over his words. This is what you can use this type of information, these clips here, to shut down people like Jerry Seinfeld and Tiffany Haddish, these celebrities that think that you owe them something, right? Just because of their status, just because of who they are. I don't owe you a damn thing. And you can all say it with me. Jerry, we don't owe you anything. Tiffany, we don't owe you anything. And just because you're a celebrity doesn't mean that we need to follow your lead. It doesn't mean that you should listen to what is being said. It's very telling what's happening here. Jake Sullivan also, here comes the stumbling.
Thank you. You said at the start of this that you don't believe what's happening in Gaza is genocide. What criterion are you using?
We're using the internationally accepted term for genocide, which includes a focus on intent. And it's not just me standing here at this podium. In the context of this International Court of Justice case at The Hague, the United States actually made a presentation backed up by legal analysis, which I would invite you to read because it lays out all of those criteria.
Francesca Albanese, the Special UN Rapporteur on Human Rights in Palestine, presented one in March. She presented it in Geneva. The three criteria she used, setting international law, 3 acts, Israel's intent to destroy national, ethnic, racial, or religious groups, serious bodily or mental harm to a group, inflicting on a group conditions of life calculated to bring physical destruction in whole or in part within imposing measures intended to prevent birth within a group, process of erasure of the native Palestinians. So those three things are happening. How can you say genocide's not being committed?
As I just told you, I think the best way for me to answer that question is actually to ask you to look at the laydown that we gave, which...
Are you saying this isn't happening?
I'm sorry, I thought you asked me how I can say it. I'm saying I'd like you to look at the United States'
I just did. I'm asking, are you saying this isn't happening?
Do you mind if I finish answering your question before you interrupt?
Are you saying that she's a liar?
The United States has laid down at the International Court of Justice in writing, in detail, its position on this issue, and I'd ask you to read it. Thank you.
Are you saying that it doesn't line up with them with what she's saying? Thank you, Jen.
And he runs away because he can't defend it anymore. Like, you can only continue to say human shield so many times before people continue to point out the numbers. And you can't defend this, right? So when Jerry Seinfeld and Tiffany Haddish tell you they support Israel, when Tiffany Haddish says, why should I care about the college? I didn't go to college, right? Maybe we should talk about this. Here we have Israelis destroying humanitarian aid. By the way, that's our tax dollars, by the way, going right down the drain. Tax dollars going down the drain. Here they are destroying humanitarian aid once again. And nobody wants to talk about it in mainstream media, right? So when they ask these State Department officials about this, part of genocide is not just blowing people up. Part of genocide is starving people as well, which is what they are trying to continue to do. No accountability for this. So for the people who continue to say, well, what about October 7th and human shields? Even during time of warfare, you cannot starve the people. You cannot starve the civilians. We have seen multiple videos where they have done this, whether it's setting a truck on fire, setting up barriers to prevent the aid from getting in the first place, or doing what they're doing in this video, which is throwing the humanitarian aid away. Israel has to be held accountable. And hopefully, now that Egypt has decided to join along with South Africa, in their case at the ICJ, hopefully this will move things in that direction, because the reality is this: you cannot leave South Africa out there standing alone. As long as you do, you will continue to have people say, well, no other country came forward. None of the other neighboring countries wanted to help. Why is that? It's disgusting. It's sickening. And honestly, at the end of the day, we got to keep it real. If we want Israel to be held accountable, that is not going to happen. And this will go into get us into the next segment. This is not going to happen under Joe Biden. This is not going to happen under Donald Trump. It's just a reality of the situation. They're both bought out by Israel. They both belong to the Israeli lobby. Let's go to some of the comments here. Trauma Queen said, I love these students. They are restoring everyone's faith in the future. That's right. That's right. Shout out to Old Crow. We need to block these celebrities and politicians. They aren't even worth the views/clicks. Block them out. Seinfeld, Kardashians, Khaled, Trump, Biden. Block them all on social media. Yeah, I agree with you, Old Crow. You know what else? I don't even really like... I find myself more and more as time goes on, like not even watching like their stuff. or like just like regular actors and like regular TV shows and stuff. I find myself spending more time watching people like cook on YouTube or something like that, right? Yeah, forget these people, man. And DJ Khaled should be ashamed of himself. Ashamed. Shout out to my comrade JB, says Tiffany Haddish, the rotten radish. Thank you, Humongous Shift. The human race needs to come together. Identity politics and division only benefit the elites. Thank you, Sabs. Doobie-doo.